Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again for everybody being here. This is my first round with this group here. Ms. Lloyd, thank you so much for being here the whole day. I know it's probably getting a bit tiring at this point, so we do thank you for that. And we are thankful as well about the fact that what we saw here, what's been widely reported, and what's culminated in criminal charges, we're obviously very happy that our security and law enforcement personnel foiled what would have been a catastrophic act. We're very thankful for that. At the same time, I echo what my colleague, Monsieur Fortin, said, where, I wrote down here that we've gotten the answers, but the answers don't feel all that reassuring. So I'm trying to look at this. I'm trying to take off my hat as a lawyer or even as a parliamentarian. So I try to look through the lens of my father, for instance. And so I'm looking at this through the lens of the ordinary Canadian. And, for instance, with you, Mr. Macquarie, when you started out, you said, I'm not sure that there are any failures. And you talked about the robust process. With all due respect, I'm not sure that satisfies the average Canadian. I'm not sure that satisfies my father. So I'm going to go through each of you. Ms. Lloyd, can you see how, given what we know, this is what we know. This person came in to Canada in 2017. They were granted a permanent residency and granted citizenship in 2024, despite there being evidence online of active acts with ISIS. Can you see how the average Canadian is not comforted by this notion of reassurance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, Honourable Member, the way I will respond to your question is that I think Canadians, in fact, should be very reassured by the comments that both myself and my colleagues have made here today, in that we take our security screening responsibilities very seriously. We have intelligence professionals and officers at each of our 3 agencies that do their work on a daily basis with rigor and professionalism. They made the best decisions available to them on the information that was available to them at that time as it relates to the security screening responsibilities they had on this and any file. And most importantly...
I'm not trying to cut you off. We do have limited time. But again, I'm not asking whether Canadians should be reassured, and I'll ask Ms. Gildas. I'm not asking whether Canadians should be reassured based on what you've said. What I'm saying is, can you understand how Canadians have serious questions here, and that perhaps this is not a situation, and Canadians shouldn't necessarily, and are justified in seeing this as a situation where there were no failures. Can you see how the average Canadian would see that, Ms. Gill?
I'll defer this question to my colleague, Madame Zafar. Thank you.
Okay, Madame.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We came to the committee today and disclosed documents, which we did so with the effort and intention of being able to meet the committee's objectives of understanding the immigration security screening process and also maintaining the confidence of Canadians in the immigration security screening and the immigration systems. I understand that there are still outstanding questions. However, due to the ongoing criminal proceedings and other protections that we have outlined in the chronology, we aren't able to go into further details.
And I'm not asking about that. I'm saying somebody came here in 2017. They were this close to committing a terrorist act. And will nobody on the panel acknowledge that Canadians are justified in being afraid that Canadians can still have questions, that perhaps this isn't a situation of there were no failures? Is there anybody that will acknowledge that on the panel?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. The system that we have in place is an ecosystem. As the statements that were made earlier, there is no one single point in which we rely on for the safety and security of Canada. So it starts with the initial touch point that we as IRCC have with an applicant. We have the Before Canada piece. We've talked about CBSA and their ability to then use any additional information before an individual boards an aircraft. The point of entry, if there's additional information that has been received where CBSA would be able to identify those threats. And then we have the domestic network as
I,
well.
I understand the processes, and you've been through that very clearly. And that's not what I'm asking about. And for the last 4 minutes, I've been asking about how the average Canadian should see this and the lens through which they should be looking at, and whether the average Canadian, whether you can see, and with all due respect, you're here
So,
in the
Mr.
security
Caputo?
apparatus. Just one moment, please. You're here. And the average Canadian is on the ground.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure that they should be
Thank
satisfied.
you, Mr.
through this.
Caputo.
Thank you.
Any last response? No. Okay, we go now to Mr. McDonald for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just want to echo some of the sentiments of my colleagues in regards to the job that the witnesses do each and every day to keep Canadians safe. There's not a job out there that we can't improve, that any of us do at any point in time in our lives, and we'll continue to strive for excellence. And this is part of the process. But no one really talked about, and I'm going to direct my questions to Miss Gates Flaherty. Can you talk a little bit about the Greater Toronto Area Integrated National Security Enforcement Team that actually made the arrests? Can you give us an overview of that team?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I'm here in my capacity as the Director General of the Canadian Criminal Real-Time Identification Services. So I don't have in-depth information about those teams, but certainly could come back to the committee in writing with information about the work of those groups.
Is there anyone else on the panel that can speak about the Greater Toronto Area Integrated National Security Enforcement? Oh, okay, I'll move on. So I want to be clear on something else as well. Just on the trilateral agreements with each department.
Mr. McDonald, could you maybe make sure your mic is in the right place? You're kind of coming in and out. Try that again.
How's that?
That's
that
better.
okay?
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. I'll repeat just to be clear for clarity on the process of the trilateral. CSIS and CBSA provide security advice to IRCC. Is that correct?
That is correct.
However, CSIS and CBSA do not make decisions on applications. Is that correct as well?
That's correct.
So how does IRCC consider advice from CSIS and CBSA then when the process is completed to that point?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. When a comprehensive security screening is concluded, CBSA will provide a recommendation as well as an assessment and information for the IRCC officer to consider. That recommendation can come back as favorable, at which point it indicates to the officer that there are no further concerns from a security screening perspective. It could come back as non-favorable, which indicates that there are concerns, or it could come back as inconclusive, which could indicate to the officer that more information is required for a recommendation. Our officers will then take that into consideration, and there's a number of things that they can do with, for instance, a non-favorable recommendation. We are subject and we do abide by the rules of procedural fairness, as I mentioned earlier. So what that means is that if we have adverse information on an applicant, the officer will provide the opportunity for that applicant to address that adverse information. The information that's received back, whether it's through an interview or in writing, is then assessed again by the officer before making a final decision. In that final decision, if it is an approval, the visa will be issued. If it is a refusal, after having given the applicant the opportunity for procedural fairness, the decision maker, so the officer, will put down all of their findings and their decision in writing to indicate to the applicant the refusal.
Thank you. And so, Ms. Savar, on this process, the final say on the refugee claimants would that be the RPD?
Yes,
Who
thank
has
you
the
for
final say?
It would be the Refugee Protection Division of the Immigration and Refugee Board.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick question, and I know it was brought up earlier on facial recognition. Is there any other countries in the world you actually using facial recognition for security intelligence? Does anybody have any idea?
Mr. Chair, I would decline to comment on the capabilities and methodologies used by other countries, and would remind the committee that other countries may do so under other pieces of legislation or authorities that may or may not apply in the Canadian context.
Thank you, Ms. Lloyd. And further note, just on the whole process of our trilateral, is this something that's very similar in other, being used very similar in other countries, or can we compare?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I'm not familiar with the methodologies that other countries use for immigration screening at this time.
Okay, thank you, Chair. That's all for me.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, witnesses.
On y va maintenant à Monsieur Fortin.
Now we move to Mr. Fortin again. 2.5 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question will be for Mr. McCrory. Mr. McCrory, the targets keep increasing. We had 55,000 asylum seeker requests, and they've gone up year over year over year. 92,000 in 2024 asylum requests. The targets for 2024 have just kept on increasing. So there is more and more demand, more and more people who want to come to Canada, and more who are coming in. Do you not believe that the resources to properly screen these requests should go up in tandem?
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair.
In fact, in 2020, from fiscal year 2023, 22-23 to 23-24, sorry, from 22-23 to 23.
Forget about the numbers, Mr. McCrory. We just have a number. So the resources go up.
Is more resources would allow us to do more, to clear more files. We take the time necessary to clear to do the thorough research in every file that we have. And so what you're seeing is an increase in our inventory. So it's and issues around our timeliness. So the issue is we're sacrificing our efficiency for our effectiveness. We're making sure that we do a good job on the files that we do review. The time and energy it takes us to do that is having impact on the number of files that we can process at any given time, and so you are seeing our inventory go up.
Have you requested from the Canadian government an increase in resources so you can act more quickly, so you can obtain information on asylum seekers, on immigration?
With our colleagues in agencies and departments.
Not do you cooperate, but have you made requests for more resources?
Yes, we work through our colleagues, for example, Immigration Refugee Citizens of Canada, as they look at refugee levels or immigration levels, for example. We collaborate with them in terms of what resources may be required.
Have you had increases in your budget over the past 2 years? And if so, what amount?
Désolé,
I'm sorry, I don't know if I understand.
What I was trying to say is in the last 2 fiscal years, we did see our budget in this particular area go up by about 15%. The exact.
Have you hired more people to do screening?
We use that money either to hire new employees or to pay overtime to the employees we have, or we sometimes bring in surge capacity from other parts of the agency to assist with the work.
Merci, Monsieur Fortin. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Fortin. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McGregor, you have the hammer. 2.5 minutes, please.
Thanks, Chair. I don't have any further questions for the witnesses, so I'm okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
I can take that 2 minutes and a half, Mr. Chair.
I think in fairness, we'll call this a day. I'd like to thank all the witnesses for your fortitude in bearing through us for all of these many hours and for all your great answers. And we look forward to talking with you again as we go forward. I'm sure we will have an opportunity to do so. And thank all the committee members for all of your diligence and hard work as well. And we are all engaged in this very important study. And thank you all, and we are now adjourned.